Welcome to the closing chapter of an era for Demon's Souls Remake PvP. I want to break this video into 7 different sections. I want to give a little brief introduction of myself, Demon's Souls Reborn, the activity of the game, build making, PvP a general overview, invasions, and also duels. An introduction to who I am, Hellservant 23. Who am I? Nobody important. I started playing Demon's Souls in 2010. I've made crappy YouTube videos since 2012, and I used to stream on Twitch back then as well. Life in the community and history of involvement. I started playing Demon's Souls in 2010, primarily invading with the occasional dueling and fight club. I fell in love with the game's RPG and invasion aspects. I spent many hours invading players with cosplays, sneaky tactics, and fighting multiple people at once. It was quite enjoyable. I actually bought Dark Souls immediately when it came out on release, and I didn't like it due to how slow it felt compared to Demon's Souls. I thought the game was a bit sluggish, didn't look as nice and pretty, and so I went back to Demon's Souls. But when I was back at Demon's Souls, I really felt the lack of a player base. So I started Dark Souls 1 again, and this time I really enjoyed it a lot. Throughout 2011, I primarily just invaded people. It's what I did in Demon's Souls. I primarily invaded everybody at different levels, low, mid, meta levels. And so when I started Dark Souls, I really just thought that was the way to play. So I did a lot of invasions. It wasn't until later in 2011 and early 2012 that I started getting into dueling. It really was around this time that I began socializing with the community and making some good connections with all sorts of PvPers. I began watching YouTube videos, commenting, joining streams, participating in fight clubs. There were so many different play styles and quote rules, I slowly started having my own identity and figuring out there was a layer of complexity to the game more than I ever imagined. It was really interesting to see the difference between players like D-Invader, Peeve, Martyrs Brigade, who were popular streamers and YouTubers at that time, compared to actual monsters in PvP, such as Pepero Tom, Safety Boss, Valkyrie Profile, Triple, Short Dude, Asphyxiated Duck, and so on. Seeing all these different players and their playstyles was really interesting. I took a nice observation point of view and saw how different people played, and with that I began improving. I started fighting in some tournaments, and I actually started winning them. Around this time, I was streaming, and I was continuing to improve in PvP. I started hosting fight clubs, observing some of the better players, seeing what tactics they use, what techniques they would use. Tried figuring out how to combat some of their play styles. I began hosting tournaments. I also hosted some other PvP events or games. And every once in a while, I would go back to Demon's Souls and host fight clubs. Sometimes it would be full of Dark Souls players. Other times, it would have some of the original Demon's Souls players join, and it'd be interesting to see how the new players from Dark Souls stacked up against the old players from Demon's Souls. It was a lot of fun. One thing I did notice is that the difference in my own skill from when I originally played Demon's Souls was huge. I had learned so much in Dark Souls 1 that going back to Demon's Souls, I felt like I was on another level. The game continued to evolve, and so I had to evolve and continue improving with it. I continued to participate in many tournaments, and I actually won first place in several of them. This leads into the next era of Dark Souls 1 PvP, which was really exciting. You actually had a huge migration of Xbox players that moved to the PS3. This led to some exciting rivalries that were then created, and you had the likes of top players from the Xbox like Predator, Spades, Fisto, Saber that moved over to the PS3. Before Dark Souls 2 was released, I had a really good following, and I made many connections through Dark Souls 1. I was eager and ready to try out this network test with Dark Souls 2. I participated in the network test, and I was immediately disappointed. But I knew that when I originally started playing Dark Souls, coming from Demon's Souls, I was also disappointed. So I wanted to be optimistic, and I played through the game hoping that I would somehow enjoy it. But it was similar as the network test, and I found it to be very ugly and tough to look at. The controls felt awful, and the game's character movement alone was such a huge downgrade from Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1 that after about 8 months or so, I stopped playing. I didn't really stream or upload YouTube videos, and I couldn't take the PvP seriously. By the time Scholar of the First Sin was released, I had no desire to play the game again. I went back to Dark Souls 1 for a short period of time. Next came up Bloodborne. I was initially excited about Bloodborne, and I think the overall game and PvP felt really good. The problem was, at the time of release and when I played, the connections were so awful it would sometimes be impossible to connect with anyone. I made several builds, but not being able to PvP much really ruined the experience. By the time the connections were fixed, I had already stopped playing. And also, by this time, I had not been an active part of the community, which was now split between those few playing Demon's Souls, a large group playing Dark Souls 1, a large but mostly new player base staying with Dark Souls 2, and now a new player base with Bloodborne. Dark Souls 3. After being disappointed by Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, I had very little hope for Dark Souls 3. I came back and rejoined with many of my old friends from Dark Souls 1, and I played Dark Souls 3 as a game for PvP. At first, it seemed fun and I enjoyed the invasions, but I really wanted the duel. This was now my preference style of play. Ultimately, after playing the game and participating in a few tournaments, which I only won one, I decided that the game's wonky hitboxes and the weapon perception was irritating me too much that I couldn't take it seriously anymore. There were many other things that I didn't like with its PvP, but those are a couple of the big ones. After Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls Remaster came out, and I briefly came back to relive my glory days, and I had some fun, but I really didn't like some of the changes made in the remaster. Also, by this time, I'd already played Dark Souls 1 so many times and with so many builds that I was burnt out and I could not play anymore. So, very shortly after it came out, I discontinued playing. And then Demon's Souls Remake came out. I bought this game and thoroughly enjoyed it. The quality of life changes and the hitboxes and the flow of the game felt very comfortable, making it easy to enjoy. I PvP'd December 2020 to February 2022. I hosted fight clubs, events, and a tournament, which did have a $500 winning pool solely gathered from donations from the community. Now that my extremely brief, aka long, introduction is over, let's actually dive into the meat and potatoes of this video, okay? Demon's Souls Remake. It's a game from 2009, Reborn. And what did it mean to the community? It was an opportunity for the original Demon's Souls lovers to come back and feel that spark they once felt over a decade ago, as well as a chance for the newer and larger player bases from newer installments to taste what started it all for their adventure. The game has quality of life changes, making movement feel smoother and combat more engaging. Due to improved internet connections and an improved network, many of the wonky hits now are smoothed out and fighting tactics changed. Although with high or very high latency players, some of the old stuff still happens, such as not being able to parry or a great sword DBS hits hitting you when it shouldn't, not making sense. 'Tis what happens with all Souls games though. However, low latency fights had repeatable and consistent results. Unfortunately, if you're going to talk about Demon's Souls Remake PvP, you're going to have to talk about the PS5 shortage and the impact that it had on Demon's Souls. The PS5 shortage crippled the potential that Demon's Souls Remake had. For the first 6 months, over 80% of the people I knew from the Souls community that wanted to play this game could not get a PS5. This made it very inactive overall compared to the other Souls games, and the ones that did have the game, they grew bored of the limited players around. This causes multiple waves of new players to join and stick around for a short time before they grew bored and then left. This cycle has repeated regularly throughout all of Demon's Souls Remake's lifespan, splitting the potential player base even further. Trying to help the community grow and prosper with a PvP guide. I fell in love with the game's PvP when I started playing it. The nostalgia it had was immense, but also the quality of the game was an upgrade, in my opinion, as well. Better connections and some quality of life changes such as omnidirectional rolling advanced the game in my mind better than any other previous game. New changes and techniques were discovered, alternating how PvP was compared to the original. To try and keep the community intact, I worked on a PvP guide. I wanted new information as well as a welcoming for new players to PvP to be shared with all. With no certainty on future From Software games, I wanted to at least try and help keep the community as active as I could since I enjoyed it so much. A bittersweet ending of a short-lived era, and thanks for allowing me to relive the nostalgia from 2010. Although it was about 1 year's worth of playing, I was able to relive the nostalgia I had from the original Demon's Souls. I was also able to relive partial nostalgia from the Dark Souls 1 days when I became a competent PvPer and hosted events for the community. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I absolutely have no regrets playing the game as much as I could in this time. Demon's Souls Remake Life and Activity. Release through Elden Ring release. The initial release of Demon's Souls Remake player base was extremely small. Very few could find invasions or people to duel. Many of the big name streamers or PvPers from other Souls games were able to get PS5s early thanks to connections. And they found that didn't have an audience for the game since majority of their audience couldn't play the game or didn't want to be spoiled by the game. So they immediately judged the game from what they saw with the brief player base and little interactions that they had, and ultimately left the game as well. As of January 2021, the game's activity was picking up and began having many people to invade. Through June 2021, the activity was very active with meta, soul level 125 duels, and invasions up to level 90. After June, the meta duels and invasions were quite rare and have been hit or miss depending on region selected and or time of day you are playing. Invasions died down at very low levels and higher levels. However, soul level 30 through 80 has never stopped being active, with level 40 through 70 being a sweet spot, allowing for non-stop invasions nearly 24/7. Even in February 2022, before Elden Ring, the invasions are always reliable. However, waiting as a host is not the same. It takes a long time to be invaded, and you will often find yourself reloading the game after you do get invaded in an effort to at least let the same invader find you. Build making. Making PvP builds can be enjoyable or tedious, and one thing that Demon's Souls allows is very quick build making due to the short PvE. Therefore, if you're making sub-level 80 invasion builds from scratch, it takes very little time, and even less time if you have people drop you the weapons or consumables. Depending on how optimal you want your builds to be, you can make 6 builds: a strength build, dex, quality, faith, mage, fit gouge, and this will allow you to use everything the game offers efficiently. Or you can make several versions of these builds along with hybrids. Example, having multiple faith builds where you have different strength or endurance stats depending on the focus of the weapons you mainly use. Or if you have, say, 2 NR builds, Northern Regalia builds, one with pure white character tendency and one with pure black character tendency. So therefore, if you join fight clubs or have duels, you can always switch between the different characters and not mess up your character tendency. Builds have depth, but are still much more simple than the later games, which is fitting for a game with a short-lived era. PvP General. None of the Souls type games are PvP dedicated games and should be treated as such. While there is depth to many of them, it's not the same caliber as, say, fighting game. With that said, I honestly love the competition within these games. However, your PvP experience will vary greatly depending on 3 main factors. PvP engagement, meaning how often you PvP in the game. Type of PvP, meaning if you primarily invade or duel. And lastly, tryhard scaling, meaning how dedicated you are to winning a fight. Now let's go ahead and jump into these 3 factors. PvP engagement. If you regularly play these games and enjoy invading or dueling, you will typically understand the difference between how weapons, armor, attacks, etc. work in PvP compared to PvE. Having that understanding leads to awareness of how much you enjoy PvP separately from PvE and co-op. Type of PvP. Do you invade, or do you duel, or do you do both? If you primarily invade, then you may view PvP as more of a thrill factor, or get off on terrorizing sweet innocent players, or perhaps you like the challenge of fighting multiple enemies at once in a battle of fortitude. This will often lead to a playstyle that is win by any means necessary, which inadvertently penalizes the invader since they have less need for precision in their PvP experience, meaning if they mess up, there's room for error due to no restrictions on healing or using any tactic that they desire, such as running away. If you primarily duel, then you more than likely will enjoy learning far more depth about the game's combat and mechanics, and which can be exploited or abused. The reason for this is because typically duels are bound by certain rules and there is less room for error in this type of PvP. So depending on your preference of play in PvP, you will find more or less enjoyment depending on what the player base allows for. Meaning, if there are less people dueling and you try finding people to duel, you won't get as much action and won't enjoy the game as much, and vice versa with invading if you only find duelists. The third factor is tryhard scaling. This factor is simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, how tryhard are you? If you are on the lower end, you probably just enjoy PvPing without the need to optimize your build, gear, weapons, or tactics, also known as being casual. If you're on the higher end, you probably optimize as much as you can and use exploits or abuse mechanics to gain an advantage. Depending on where you land on the scale and where your opponent in PvP lands will greatly influence how much you enjoy that interaction of PvP. Meaning, someone casually playing probably gets annoyed when they face someone willing to win at all costs and use the most OP weapons. At the same time, someone that's tryharding at level 10 probably gets bothered / bored by the lack of competition a casual player gives them. Now let's talk about some important concepts to be successful at PvP in Demon's Souls Remake. Without understanding the hows, the whys, you will be at a huge disadvantage. Even not using all of these concepts, but knowing how they work, can make a huge improvement in your PvP game. Some of these concepts include backstabs, canceled backstabs, pivot backstabs, roll backstabs, and knowing how they work. Also, practicing your spacing or setting up baits, patterns, knowing how to roll efficiently, knowing how to roll catch, understanding how counter hits work, understanding how parrying and riposte work, how shielding, turtling works, how pushing works in Demon's Souls, how the toggling glitch can improve your escaping from stun locks, knowing what guaranteed wake-ups are and how they work. If you want to be a mage, knowing how to pivot cast. If you understand how weapon stun locks work, then you're able to understand how to stay out of them. There's things such as push lock, there's hyper mode, hyper armor, latency, and how that impacts you. Understanding what an instant running dashing attack is, knowing how to dead angle. All of these important concepts can completely elevate your game just by understanding how they work, even without implementing. If you'd like to learn more about these, you can always refer to the PvP guide I created, and it goes in depth for each of these. Invasions. Invasions have been fun, but with a high activity player base being a lower soul level, it makes them a bit of a joke. Fully upgraded weapons at these levels do insane damage and can make what would be a challenging invasion quite easy. And at the same time can be said with an easy invasion where it might end at the moment's notice due to the high damage from a fully upgraded weapon. As well as the spell Firestorm being used by many PvEers. While not difficult to face when you're aware of it, being surprised by a host using this can often one-shot you, even with second chance due to how strong it is at lower levels. This makes lower level invasions a hit or miss with a constant variance and balance. Also, there's no character scaling when summoned, meaning there have been very high level players helping lower level players, usually their friends. So, as an invader, you may be around level 40 and the host around level 40, and you find yourself fighting a blue phantom that's soul level 200 plus. In Demon's Souls Remake, the developers made it quite simple to save and exit without needing to close the game, making it quite common for hosts to disconnect when they are invaded or about to die. This has become quite common with PvE only type of hosts to quit out whenever they were invaded. For some reason, people just can't play offline. And my final thoughts on invasions. With a lack of a player base, it's most common to find actual PvEers, which can be entertaining but slacking in the difficulty department. If you have played the game a decent amount of time, you will more than likely find a lack of a challenge with the lower level invasions. With so many of these hosts being PvE only, you find an immense amount of quitters that waste your time as an invader and cause frustration. However, the actual combat within these invasions is quite enjoyable, and the instant backstab mechanic disincentivizes people from running away or leaving their backs open with careless rolls, unlike the later installments. The last topic for today's video is regarding duels. And full disclaimer that I am a big dueler in Demon's Souls Remake, and I may have some slight bias in this category. Duels are the area in which I think Demon's Souls Remake excels the most regarding PvP. With a lack of a player base to invade at higher levels, where damage is more balanced, you can't truly diverge into the creativity and greatness of a PvP build. Dueling, however, allows this with an established meta and push for build optimization. You will often find the challenge of duels in this game to be at a much higher level than invasions can offer. If you're slacking with your knowledge of the PvP concepts I discussed earlier, then you probably are aware that you're being outplayed in a duel scenario. There are some aspects which, even in duels, can be quite OP and unbalanced, but oftentimes many of these things can be worked around if you have the know-how. An example would be a common complaint about the passiveness and the effectualness of shielding. While it is a very strong mechanic in PvP, there are ways to pressure or get around these awkward turtles, such as guard break with high stamina damaging weapons like the Murden Hammer, dead angles with weapons like the Claymore, DBS, or Uchi, or even just pressuring and backstabbing. When I wrote the PvP guide for Demon's Souls Remake, I have sections that discussed effective ways to use or fight against each weapon type. I was using my experience as a duelist to lay out ways that work, and these also carry over in invasions. This game is more restrictive in character movement than later games, but I personally find this more enjoyable. There's a comfort in not having the freedom to constantly make your character look anywhere except where your opponent is. This alone makes the combat feel much more engaging than games like Dark Souls 2 and 3. Not to mention that combat is always pressured, so it doesn't let the character constantly disengage in a fight, or else they would be punished with a backstab. Also, in Demon's Souls, it has the most accurate hitboxes to weapon models in the entire series. The game's dueling scene was at its prime from January 2021 through May 2021. There was a lot of interest and activity with fight clubs and tournaments popping up. After June, it has become very difficult to find random duels, and most of the duels are set up through Discord, PSN chats, or streams. The strongest build setups for duels would be the Shield Cat, Dex builds, Faith builds, and a Vit Gouge NR build. With the use of the Educator's Shield, even non-Faith builds have very good HP regen. However, when combined with Blessed Weapon regen, it's no wonder why Faith builds have been the most popular. Having 14 HP per second regen as a Phantom is quite powerful, and it can make fights last much longer than they normally would. You will also normally see the Dark Silver Shield, as it is a powerful shield used on almost every build. It's also very interesting to see how the Western world's meta compared to that of the Japanese meta. The game's dueling scene has changed drastically from the original Demon's Souls, primarily due to a couple changes. Backstab chains have been removed but have opened up another option, which many view as worse. This is the guaranteed wake-ups, meaning after a critical and your character animation is standing up, there's a frame in which you are vulnerable to damage, yet cannot move and people hit you during that state. Another strong change has been the adjustment to roll distance being shortened, allowing roll catching to be much easier and more effective, essentially boosting weapons that weren't great before, like the Large Sword of Searching, becoming the best weapon in the game. Also, shields have become stronger due to the ease of parrying. However, if you are predictable, you can still be punished with a backstab on your parry attempts. You may notice that latency plays a bigger role in duels, since every little difference can mean a missed opportunity or an unfair hit that puts you at a disadvantage. While the game's network has been drastically improved, and in my opinion handles it better than any other Souls games, there are times that all you can do is accept that the latency is there and move on. If this bothers you, then don't duel that player. A standard etiquette was established briefly, but with the turnover of the player base, it has mostly eroded into whatever people want. The only common theme has been not allowing grass heals. Duels have been quite enjoyable and the most effective way at improving your skills in PvP, but with a low interest player base, it has been unfortunately short-lived. If games like Elden Ring and other future FromSoft games take any notes PvP-wise from Demon's Souls, I hope that it would be the threat of disengagement in a fight can severely hurt you or get you killed. Or just make the hitboxes similar to Demon's Souls, whichever would work. Duels and PvP in Demon's Souls have been nostalgic and quite enjoyable. It was a great wave to ride in preparation for Elden Ring. I'm so glad I was a part of it and I didn't miss out on that rare opportunity to be with the community again.